So let's get started. Thank you so much for joining me on this lovely wet morning. I hope you're enjoying our virtual events offering. As I said, I've put in the chat the events link, so feel free to view this after the webinar. They're completely free to attend, and we've got so many incredible virtual events coming up over the next few weeks. So, the new workplace will be a hybrid model where working from home and the office takes centre stage. Planning for a safe return to the office is essential and requires a seamless and secure manner to keep the workplace safe and productive. In the 60-minute webinar, Graham Phelps, trainer with brilliant customer service, will provide clear and precise advice for all customer service, sales and office staff. You're welcome to ask some questions during the presentation. There'll also be a live Q&A afterwards. So please please use the Q&A function when you have a question. So Graham, over to you. Can you hear me, Graham? Oh, well, this has never happened before.
Thank you very much. Hold on a minute, let's have a look.
There you go.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Am I there yet?
Yep, we can hear you.
You're a bit crackly there, Kayleen. Let's wait. Is that good? Am I there?
You're good, we can hear you.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the introduction, Kayleen. Good, that's all right. Now, today's webinar is going to be about half an hour plus a Q&A. And as I go through, I'm going to simplify some fairly complex subjects, but if you have a specific point you'd like to ask, you can do this in one of two ways. You can send a Q&A through the button at the bottom of Zoom, or you can send a chat, or you can perhaps, if you're brave enough, turn on the microphone and speak it out loud later on if we can, when I hand over to Kayleen at the end. Now, if you can't hear me for some reason, if the rain affects the internet where I am here in Norfolk, please send a message and I'll try doing controls. Yesterday, I was in London for the first time since March. The last time I was in London was on the day of lockdown, and I was escorted from the building by 2 security guards for an insurance company, and we were ordered out as lockdown was taken as a literal at the moment thing. And I have to say, I was rather shocked. It was like a Sunday morning, or rather it was like a very quiet Sunday morning. The train, tubes, the buses, and I was traveling a lot around London, particularly this is a very important time in the next 2 or 3 weeks. If you are about to open up your offices, if you're getting back to normal, you're going to face, I think, a challenge in getting your staff and your colleagues, not to mention your customers' confidence back. So let's get on with the webinar, and maybe I can give you some insights and ideas, and maybe you need some confidence. Let's see. So I'm just going to share my screen for the first time, and I shall be back to talk to camera as well at some points during the session. Now, this session is designed to be a practical guide for managers, for business owners and staff in the world we live in today, which of course faces the threat of coronavirus. I'm not going to go into lots of science. I'm not going to go into lots of statistics and details. And I'm very pleased to say there is not a graph in sight during this presentation. Now, my background is I've worked in business for many, many years. My first role as a manager was back in my early 30s. I became a sales manager. Today, I run a business called Brilliant Customer Service. My last proper job was as a main board director of Thomson Reuters here in London, with 550 staff across 7 countries. And we've had all sorts of challenges over the years since then. I was in the office when we had that tragic terrorist attack in London, and I was involved in marshalling the staff for the day and getting them home safely. Myself and 2 other managers were the only senior managers. We lost 3 staff that day. So I'm not averse to difficulties and troubles and tribulations, but what I'm going to do today is trying to be optimistic, because I think that's the quality that's missing. let's get on with the session. I've focused this session particularly around customer service, support, and sales situations. And I know some of you are in those businesses already. I know solicitors and theatres. We need to get back into place. We cannot run these businesses particularly well virtually. I'm going to keep it clear. I'm going to keep it practical. My points and ideas, though, do not replace professional advice you may get from your business, from the local council, or from the government. And I always read the label. What does that mean, Graham? It means choose to take this advice and research it yourself. Please make sure that you understand the principles and the theory behind that. And some of these points are interpretive as well as you go through. Now, it is about being practical. We are living in this coronavirus and it's not going away. So it's not about waiting and then starting. I think we have to get going, and we have to get going quickly. My personal opinion. To give it a sense of perspective, and I researched these points yesterday, 90% of the UK population are living in a neighborhood where there has been no outbreak of coronavirus in the last 4 weeks. So there is still a threat, but it's far, far smaller than it might have been even just a few weeks or months ago. However, the paradox is, another study showed that in the UK, this is in the Telegraph, 70% of staff, office working staff, are still nervous about a back to work situation, which is nearly double what it is in continental Europe and far higher than it is in the US. Now, as a race, are we more cautious? I don't know. But the fact is, it doesn't matter about the cause. The reality, if you run a business, is how do you bring your staff back in and resume the same level of engagement and service and motivation that was paramount back in January and February. You have to work quite hard to catch coronavirus. Now, I may end up regretting saying these words, but this is what the research is telling me just this week. So how would you go about catching coronavirus? Well, basically, you would have to be indoors with somebody who has coronavirus, knowingly or unknowingly, and maintain a close contact for an excess of 20 minutes. So maintain a close contact. And then there's a degree of bad luck involved because, of course, one person can infect many others, but they can also not affect others. So how you catch coronavirus, unfortunately, is still not 100%, but you would have to be, one, quite unlucky, and two, have a protracted time close to somebody who has it. Now, here are a few other things I just want to cover before we get into the three main pillars of advice. Can you touch coronavirus by touching someone? Well, in theory, yes. In practice, it's not been proved. Coronavirus is transmitted by water droplets, which of course can live on the skin. When you have it on your hand, you touch your face, it can happen that way. It is unfortunately, though, more airborne than touchborne. Can you prevent catching it by wearing a mask? No, but it does help to stop spreading it, and it gives people you work with or you serve confidence. Should you go to your GP if you feel unwell? Absolutely not, apparently. You stay home, you make a phone call, you get tested. But you do not go trotting down to the GP. If you've been to your GP recently, you'll see these big signs saying, if you're unwell, don't come in. And number 4, avoid touching door handles. Yeah, that's generally good advice. And I know people who have never touched door handles for 20 years because they're always doing this elbow thing because they're sort of germ phobic. And they're the ones that are walking around with their told you so t-shirts on. But by and large, yes, make sure that you disinfect all those areas regularly in your workplace and kind of avoid them if you can. Wash and sanitize your hands every hour. Now, I read this recently and I thought, really? And then I thought, well, it's not going to hurt, is it? I mean, can you overwash your hands? Can you be over clean? I'm not sure. But the fact is, if it makes you feel confident, if it helps to prevent the spread of the virus, go for it, right? So you've got to, as an employer or as an employee, you've got to navigate all these things and facts and fiction and try and make sense of it. So let me see if I can help you with that one. As I mentioned, the objective is not just to explain the science, but also to improve people's confidence, including yours. It's difficult to try and find a clear explanation for coronavirus that doesn't go on for thousands of words. The goal has to be to reduce the chance of infection in your daily work, and that has to be the guiding principle. So there are 3 pieces of advice that I've boiled it down to. You also must maintain your customer service essentials or sales essentials or co-work. And this is, by the way, internal customer service. We cannot just use the coronavirus COVID-19 environment as not quite an excuse, but as a reason why we're doing poor service. And I'm going to finish the webinar by going through some service examples, which might help some of you in specific industries. So yes, it's a threat. I'm going to put my cards on the table and say it is a challenge we can cope with if we follow certain rules. And these are the rules. Number 1. We'll get there, right? Work and communicate online. Like you don't know this already? Okay, now what's fascinating to me is that as a communicator, as a professional trainer, as a business person, we've been teetering on the edge of using video calling or online meetings and Skype for years. And there's always been this, oh, well, it's so much better face to face. And now, of course, we're being forced perhaps to communicate using Teams and Zoom and Skype and telephone. And actually, many people I talk to would still prefer face to face, but they've actually been quite surprised how well it works. But as we go back into our office, as we go back into our workplace, we need to keep that working, that online working. We need to, of course, keep our distance and reduce crowding. And thirdly, and perhaps more importantly than the other 2, we need to get the wipe, wash and clean habit. You see, if the virus does not exist in our environment, unless we bring it in from outside, we can't really spread it. So before I start going through the tips and techniques, I just want to remind you of, and this is a key message, I think, if you have staff, it's all about responsibility. A colleague of mine, Paul McGee, did a great video recently on Facebook where he talks about the BSE crisis. And everyone's going, what, BSE crisis? This is in the first 30 seconds of the video. BSE, that was years ago, Paul. And then he talks, blame somebody else. So yeah, we can always blame somebody else. But at the end of the day, it's our responsibility. And it's our responsibility to ourselves to do everything we can. It's our responsibility to our co-workers, managers and colleagues. And of course, it's our responsibility to our customers. And each of those groups have a responsibility as well. So these 3 areas, social distancing, hygiene standards, and staying home if you're unwell, or sending somebody else home if they're unwell in any capacity. It's difficult, once again, to have a definitive set of symptoms for coronavirus. And in fact, as you know, often the symptoms do not show themselves, at least not for a period of time. So they may come around as a general fatigue or tiredness or irritability. So we need to be particularly sensitive to that. So let's go through this in more detail. Some of this is already known to you. Of course, we have been in this situation now for some time. But my message is this: even when we're back working in an office environment and we're all kind of spaced out, hopefully physically, not just mentally, we still need to work and communicate online. Don't get up and walk across the room to a colleague's desk. Call them, phone them, have a Skype call. We used to joke in the old days about sending emails to people who you're sitting next to. This is no longer a joke. This is a necessity. So keep working online, even where people are in the same building. It can be fun and effective. I know many people have saved 10 or 15 hours a week from working online. A solicitor I was talking to recently said that his billable hours have gone up by 12%, and the firm he works for have just cancelled half the lease of the building they have because they want their fee earners to work from home because they're more productive. They will still get them together from time to time. Customers may still be a little reluctant to travel into a meeting room. Make online meetings work for you. If you haven't mastered this technology yet, then please do so. I think the other thing that was so common when I was working in an office is this kind of thing, the ad hoc meetings, the getting together around a table. We've got to move away from that. That isn't going to happen anymore. Now, the keeping your distance thing, since I put these slides together, of course, the debate has started about whether it's 1 meter or 1.5 meters or 2. Kind of missing the point, really. You've got to keep a distance from your colleagues, co-workers, and customers. The minimum is 1 meter, ideally it's 2. Now, the challenge in the workplace, as it is when you meet with family and friends, is that familiarity makes you drop your guard slightly. Hence the signage, hence the perspex screens between desks or equipment in gyms or at the counter when you go to pay. Because you can forget quite easily with people you see every day, you still have to keep that 3 to 6 foot distance. Sorry to use old money. It's force of habit, right? But you have to be able to do that. And you have to reduce the number of people you come into contact with. Now, this also means outside of work. So there is no point in really being very clever and very adherent to the rules of distancing when you go out to see lots of friends, or you abuse the rule when you go to a cafe or a restaurant. So you can catch and bring it back into the workplace or your school or wherever it is that you do business. So make sure you reduce the number of people you come into contact with, keep a distance, and the simple advice, the fewer people, the safer it is, quite simply. So no more meetings, chat online, wherever you can. No touching, no handshakes. Once again, little force of habit, but it's very easy to change. The more you can space out in a building, the better it is, keeping your distance, but don't forget the wipe and wash habit. If you can't keep a distance, you know the advice is always to wear a face mask and disposable gloves. And my experience of doing this recently in various situations is it's probably worth investing in good quality face masks, because when you wear them all day, it really does get uncomfortable. So I can understand now when you see the people wearing these fancy, expensive ones, it kind of makes sense. It also makes sense to keep it on, not to keep taking it on and off each time, because that of course means that you're putting it down, you're touching your face. So keeping a mask on all the time you're in a building or just all day is so much more effective. We'll come on to face masks in just a moment, but this has also recently changed. Now, what happens if one of your colleagues, one of your customers come too close? Well, you can step back if possible. Difficult if you're operating a till or at a counter. If not, eye contact, smile. Would you mind stepping back, please? There is no excuse for rudeness or bad manners, even a member of the public to the member of the public. And I did see a couple of altercations recently where people were in a shop and somebody else came in, and it was very aggressive, and I thought that isn't needed. In today's world, we could be nicer to each other. Why wear a mask? Well, it apparently helps you prevent the spreading of the virus, if indeed you have it, perhaps without knowing it. If you think you have the virus, go home, stay in, don't leave the house, right? Get tested. If you don't know you've got the virus, well, it will come out of your mouth or your nose through water droplets, which are caught to a high degree by the mask. The second point, and this is perhaps really important, it will give people confidence to work with you and customers to return back into your premises. But it only works if everyone wears them. So please bear that in mind if you want to enforce that, and it's something you perhaps don't need to do, but you choose to do it. Now, stopping the virus spreading is, of course, vital. And in the workplace, there are many ways that it could spread. So in crowded places like trains and planes and so on, this makes a lot of sense. And I saw most people adhering to this in the last few days. Change it, wash it daily. There's no point in putting on a contaminated mask. The wipe, wash and clean habit is something that you need to get everyone in your business to do. And there are certain bits of equipment that are more prevalent than others. Washing your hands, simple, 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 but effective. Phone and computers and desk areas, they're the most common, but also things like tills, books, anything that you may need to operate, just have wipes and a spray. And I saw this recently at a local gym I go to in Watton, and there's a big dispenser of wipes with a spray hanging on a hook all over the place. And every time somebody finishes using a piece of equipment, they go over, they get the spray, they get the wipes, they wipe it down. The staff walk around once an hour. It gives customers and the staff confidence. And it's a really simple thing to do. If you cannot wash your hands because of your environment, then obviously disinfectant and the sanitizers these days are everywhere, even outdoors, walking around the city. It's a very simple thing to do. It doesn't need any expensive soap, just ordinary soap. For 20 seconds or more, you will get rid of the virus. So make sure that people are doing this, perhaps as start of a work routine, and this should be also part of a risk assessment. Risk assessments, health and safety people are very good at physical things like signage and rules, but it's everyday human behavior you have to capture. Making sure your hands are clean is, I think, from what I've read, one of the most important things. Now, let's go through and look at a few customer service essentials. Now, if anyone has any questions at this point, if I missed anything, or you may have a disagreement with any of my points, and please do so. My thinking in this is the limited little bit of insight I have into human behavior after many years of training, is if you make something complicated, onerous, and difficult to understand, it's unlikely to be followed. If you make something simple, you can repeat it, you can reinforce it, and you can get people to do it, everyone will want to do it. It's kind of this sort of herd mentality of nobody wants to be the person who doesn't wash their hands, or doesn't wipe the computer down, or doesn't wipe the door handles down once an hour, these kind of things. And remember, there are two reasons you're doing this. One is, of course, to stop the spread of the virus, but secondly, it's to increase people's confidence in returning back to the office, to the workplace, to the job they do. Even things like taxi drivers or delivery people. Okay, so we need to instill confidence so people come back to work with a positive attitude and customers are relaxed when they're in our presence. So let's look at a few customer service essentials, and then I'll go on to part 3, which is examples. So keep offering great customer service. It's one of the best ways of running a business. It's the best ways of customer satisfaction. And also, I think it's a moral duty. Just my personal thing, right? 4 things you need to do. You keep smiling, acknowledge patience, be more friendly, be slightly more friendly than you would do normally, and be very good at managing expectations. See, even with a mask on, I know she's not wearing a mask, but with a mask on, you can still see a smile, right? It's in your eyes, it's in your demeanor, it's in your voice. And thankfully, it's one of the things which is catching that we still want to catch. Acknowledge patience. Yes, things are slower, more difficult. Things aren't really as quick and as slick as they should be or they were a year ago. Acknowledge that. Apologize for the wait, the delay. People will understand if you thank them for waiting. Friendly and personalization. And I've been really impressed, by the way, by a number of the pubs and restaurants I've visited in the last few weeks, and how great the staff are. You wouldn't know for a moment that they've been at home and not working for 3 months. Maybe they're really pleased to be back and serving customers. But I just noticed the service now is way back up to the top level in terms of friendliness and personal ability and, hi, good to see you, how are you? Exactly what customer service should be. And finally, manage expectations. The old adage of under promise and over deliver has never been truer. If your products are going to take twice as long to deliver, tell the customer, don't wait for them to find out. Grumpy customers are created in most cases. I know there are some people that are naturally grumpy, but most of them are because somebody somewhere overpromised and then underdelivered. So make sure that when you bring your staff back, when you begin to start the engine up again of your business, these 4 elements are reinforced, trained, and practiced day to day. Very important. So let's have a look at some examples. Now, I'm not an expert in any of these businesses, but I'm just going to give you some ways of bringing this theory to life, right? So number 1 is contact centers. Number 2 is shops. 3 is estate agency. 4 is cafes, and 5 is hotels, and 6 is support technician. Let's go through these. Well, in a contact center or an office, working from home with a distributed network can work, but that's not what a lot of people signed up for when they did a job. And also, a lot of people do not have a home that fits the model of working from home. I do a lot of training online now. And the number of times, we see children riding shotgun on daddy's knee while he's being trained on something. And the number of times I do presentations to cats and dogs and bunny rabbits who have to sit on the computer for some reason. I don't know why. But I do believe that there's a large majority of people who are looking forward to getting back into a normal workplace. Maybe not every day. Maybe not exactly as it was in the past. Yes, you have to space out the desks. You have to wear masks. You have to be particularly careful around pinch points like corridors, kitchen areas, and doorways. Move meetings to online, even in the same building. Make time to step outside for discussions and meetings. A few tables outside, so long as the weather holds, although looking from the day's weather, given that it's August and it's pouring with rain like November, that's probably not a bit optimistic on that one. And make sure that every desk has something to clean it with, disinfect it with, and put in those sanitation stations so people can wash their hands a lot. Outside, as we mentioned, is best. You see, fresh air is your friend when it comes to coronavirus. Make sure windows are open, things are ventilated, doors are propped open. Enclosed pockets of air will only encourage the virus to spread. So if you can't get to work or talk or meet outside, create an outside environment inside. Now, most of us have traveled back into shops and showrooms, and I have to say it's getting easier. The queues are diminishing. As I said, in London yesterday, and people are very accepting of the mask. There's not much problem. People are moving around quickly. They're following the arrows. But if you run a shop or showroom, make sure it's clear and uncluttered, open doors, clear marking. Most of us are there on this one, but I've noticed also they do wear down and they're not always prominent. The big indoor shopping mall, the Into in Norwich, I noticed when they first did this, because these signs were on the floor and they weren't very prominent, people didn't follow the one-way system, and the poor old security people were going around, going blue in the face saying, could you move over, could you move over, right? So do it politely, thank people for understanding, and do wear a mask so you can therefore encourage others to wear a mask. Estate agency, a friend of mine suggested this one because they have to go into people's homes. They may have to travel with people in a car. So when you're doing a viewing and you've got a couple here you've never met before, and there's a couple in the house you've never met before, maybe ask the people to step out, let the others walk around. Always make sure you keep your distance. Do any discussions outside where you can, or into a large, well-ventilated area. And the one estate agency I talked to have a rule of 1 person per room. And masks in this environment absolutely make sense. And I do know, once again, that estate agents have made better use now of videos and send those to people so that the visits they do are actually much more, if you like, qualified than just going around and having a look. The trouble is, of course, that you're dealing with three groups of people here: the estate agent, the viewer, and the homeowner or tenant, if you like. So you need to keep all three separated, and that's something you need to look at. Cafes and restaurants, well, we've all seen this now. Marking the floor, I would suggest put the signs at eye level, because not many people walk around looking at the floor. The clear signage needs to be changed and moved around regularly. Health and safety people will tell you about something called sign blindness, that when a sign is fixed, people stop noticing it. So those kind of banners that you pull out and those kind of things. And as I've seen in many shops, having, I don't know what they call them, the sort of meet and greet person at the door, just, hi, good morning. Can I just ask you to wait here, please? Could you make sure you keep away from people? Just that personal touch is so much more friendly than some big officious sign saying, keep your distance, right? Even if your only customers are internal customers, it's so much nicer than that. Now, I used to travel a great deal and I used to stay away a great deal. Am I ever going back to traveling on trains and planes in the way I used to and staying in hotels? Well, let's hope so. If you run that sort of establishment, now clearly people have to wear a mask. Let people pass. Make sure the floor markings are there. Restrict number of customers. But above all, be polite. Make sure that the customer experience is no different, even though you have to adhere to some of these things. And most importantly of all, just get this regime of hygiene. If there's one thing that I've read over and over again that will help reduce the risk of coronavirus and increase people's confidence, it's seeing regular cleaning being done everywhere. Finally, a couple more: supports and trades, what I call support technicians. You're in people's homes, you have to wipe and wash, you have to wear masks, protective gloves, you have to ask the homeowner not to stand next to the washing machine while you're trying to fix it, and particularly their children, because children don't understand these things. And be polite about it, but you can still do a safe job. I've had an electrician in recently, and the same things. He would tell me the rooms he's going to be in. He'd ask us not to come in the room, and he would wear a mask and gloves and wipe down everything both before and after he finished. What was also interesting, he disinfected all his tools before he started, and also his toolbox. So it can be done, and it can make a difference. We do need to try and think these things through. My suggestion is, if you are confident yourself, that's great, but don't assume that your staff or your colleagues or co-workers will be. Understand and help them understand how the virus spreads. The single most important advice, by the way, is if you or one of your colleagues feel unwell, go home and stay there. Get tested and wait to see how it develops. There is no shortage of sources of information on this one, but the one final thought I'd like to leave you with is that you need to encourage others to be careful and be safe. But that still means you can be polite, friendly, ask them nicely, and redirect them back to safe working without any problem at all. Just my final point of safety, my non-disclosure here is, make sure that you are cognizant with all the advice your company and legislation requires. And that, of course, trumps any advice I might give you in this webinar, because things may change if you're watching this on a recording. Keep smiling and stay safe. We need to get back to work confidently and safely. And I think the points I've covered will help you and your colleagues do so correctly. So I'm just going to now pause. I've got a poll that I'd like Kayleen to run for me. And the poll is very simple. So I'm just going to ask Kayleen to put this on the screen for me now. How confident are you in returning to normal office working, assuming that you've not done that yet? And if you have started, the chances are you're not fully back on, if you like. So could you tick either very confident, no worries at all, slightly concerned, or very concerned? So
25 out of 30, 26 have completed it. 27, are you happy for me to end it?
Yeah, yeah, I can't see the result. You have to share it with me, I think.
It's interesting.
Let's have a look.
Share results. There you go.
Okay, slightly concerned. All right. Well, that slightly concerned is slightly lower than the national average would tell me. Very concerned is 7%, right? Okay, so let's have a quick look at that. That would be also probably be similar to your staff and others, all right? And it will go up, by the way, by their personal situation. If they have elderly parents or children, then that will probably concern them further. Okay, now I'm just glancing at the chat here, and it says we have asked all employees to complete a survey prior to returning to the office to understand how they are feeling, what to expect. We are planning to put in place is anonymous to all others except the staff. Honest and important. Good. I like that. My recommendation, having been through various crises in my time as a manager, including things like someone dying in the workplace and these sort of things, it's all about dialogue. It's all about communication. And there was a fantastic webinar that the Chamber did a while back where a guy came on from a company in Norwich. And from the day one of lockdown, he did a daily online meeting with all his staff, and every single day. And I don't know what he would want to talk about, right? But he did, because he needs to communicate with his staff and all the uncertainties. They need to share their fears and concerns. You need to explain things probably over and over again. So my suggestion is, turn up the communication dial with your staff, with your colleagues, and with your customers. And communication is a two-way street. So I would do one-to-ones, I would do group discussions, the start of every shift, every morning. I would get people socially distanced together, and I would just talk things through. I would remind them again, keep a distance, wash and wipe. If everyone feeling well, anyone have any questions, and just keep doing that. I like the idea of communication, but I do think it's got to be pulsed on almost a daily basis, particularly in the first 2 or 3 weeks of coming back in. Absolutely. Any more, Kayleen, can you see any more questions?
Yeah, we've had a couple of questions come in. If anyone's got any more questions, feel free to pop it in the Q&A function or the chat function, whichever's easiest for you. So we've had a couple of questions which you've kind of touched on, but feel free to elaborate if you want.
Yeah.
Why are staff at, let's say, Tesco's and Asda not wearing masks? Is there any rationale behind this?
It's a very good question. I did wonder that myself, actually. And I do believe the Perspex screens that they work behind is one of the reasons. And I believe also some of them now have the heat ray test on the forehead, like they did in the Apple store when that opened in Norwich after lockdown. I'm not really sure why. It is unusual. Like bus drivers in London yesterday, they do not have to wear a mask, but all the passengers do. It is a bit of a quirk. But I think it's probably because you're more likely to catch it from a customer than a member of staff. Whoever asked that question, I am of the mind that staff should wear the mask because it's setting an example. And I think that's the right way of going about it. So, I know Ian is here from the National Puppet Theatre, and I won't make an obvious joke about if you want anything done, Ian's the man because he can pull a lot of strings. I wouldn't make a joke like that, right? But you need to encourage your customers to wear masks and to socially distance, and that means you have to go there first. Oh, and by the way, if you're a senior manager, yes, you have to wear one too when you come in the office, right? And it is unusual to start with. It does feel a bit odd. I nearly poured coffee all over myself yesterday because I forgot I had it on. And I'm sure other people have done that. But I've also traveled and seen it down in the Far East, and they don't even think about it now. And by the way, in the Far East and Japan and places, they don't wear them for other people. They wear them for other people, not themselves. If you have a cold, you wear a mask to stop yourself spreading it to other people. Yeah, peculiar one, but I think there must be something to do with the Perspex screens they have.
Thank you. We've also got another question. Also, what about wearing the mask at work all the time, even with social distancing in place?
Yes, I think so. I really do. The schools debate is going on as this video is airing and making. And the reality is apparently you have more chance of catching a virus from a fellow teacher if you're a teacher at school than you do from the children. So, you know, if you're wearing a mask, you're probably best wearing it all the time. Staff room, on the way, on the bus, on the train. It's actually easier to put it on and leave it on, because, you know, I found this just working around London, going in and out of offices. Is like, where's my mask? Where's my mask? You know, and you walk in and there's some security guy saying, I'm sorry, sir, you have to stop there. You're not wearing a mask. Oh, yeah, yeah, sorry, I forgot. And so put it on, keep it on. You'll get used to it. I get a comfortable one, and there's many different ones. There's quite a lot of designer ones if you want to get carried away with this. But yeah, I would say you put it on in the morning, you walk in the office, and you take it off when you leave. Why not?
Thank you. We've also got a great question here. Just wondering what your advice is about aircon in offices, and should we have magazines and newspapers in the office?
Okay. Yes, aircon, window open is better, but aircon is good too. Anything because it filters and circulates the air. Static air is not your friend with coronavirus in closed spaces. So, you know, don't go in the stationery cupboard with somebody else, basically. Should we have books, magazines? No. Take out all the clutter. Take out all of that stuff. Take away anything that someone could touch and leave the virus on. So that's what I was saying about shops and showrooms. You don't want to have brochures around. You don't want to have samples. All of that needs to go away. If you need to get it out, you get it out. You wipe it down. You know, none of us wants to see this cap come back up again. And I know people who have, I know several people who have had coronavirus, and you know, it isn't pleasant by any means. So no, get rid of all the books, the magazines, all those toys in reception area, whatever you have. The fewer things people can touch, the fewer chances they have to spread the virus. In my understanding of the situation. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you, Julie. That was a great question. Following from what you've just said, we've just had a question come in from Penny saying, what about fans? I thought I read these should not be used in the workplace.
Okay. I'm not sure why the specific advice is about fans. All the advice is well ventilated areas, even down to, you know, even if it's slightly chilly, our staff to wear a jumper and keep the window open. That ventilation is so important because it's an airborne water virus. So if there's a movement of air, I suppose what it could also be is to move, you know, the water vapor towards people. But I think by and large, as long as there's a window open and you're not just recirculating the air, a fan is probably a good idea. I mean, you may not need it the way the weather's going at the moment, but it's a good question, right?
Thank you.
Okay.
And then we've got our final question, unless any more come in between now and answering it. And so Ian has said, masks versus visors, which one would you advise?
Good question. Good question. All right. I think if you were working close up with somebody where you could not social distance, like a hairdresser or a vet or a dentist, it's a visor. A mask is not a foolproof mechanism for preventing someone spreading the virus. Now, even a visor has a gap and has air coming through it. So you may catch it, you may spread it, but a visor is seen to be a stronger device than a mask. But where you have a large number of people coming in, they're not all going to be able to afford or buy a visor. So a mask is the next best thing. So I would say that's definitely important. But yeah, visors, if you have staff who are by necessity having to get up front and close to customers or colleagues, then a visor would be the way to go. Yeah. Okay. So I just want to, if I may, that's the questions done. Yeah.
Yeah.
None of my advice, by the way, will override risk assessment by a professional. So the questions about fans and air conditioning, it does, of course, depend on the room and the people inside it. But common sense needs to be common practice. Social distancing 1 to 2 meters apart. Make sure people are wearing masks, washing their hands regularly. And if they're not feeling great, send them home. Simple, simple, simple. Online meetings, even for people in the same building, is probably the way to go. And reducing the number of people you come into contact with is good advice for as long as we can imagine that. So if you have any other questions, you can always email me through HYGIENE. And what I would say for those of you that are working in an organization is hopefully this message will be inspiring to you, not just in the content, but in the medium. Make the advice clear and specific. I think there's so much confusion and so much misinformation and too much overcomplication of information that your job is to make sure your colleagues and co-workers and customers are not only operating safely, but are confident to return to work quickly. So thank you very much for your time and your attention today. And I hope you've got something of interest from this. Kayleen, back to you.
Thank you. So just addressing, Sarah kindly said that she's got an industry guidance on ventilation, including air conditioning. So I've asked her to share it, and I'll share it with everyone after this webinar. Just to let you know that I will share the slides slash presentation that Graham just delivered with you shortly. And then as soon as the recording is available, then I'll share this with you all as well, just so you can go back and rewatch it or share with a colleague, whatever you want to do. You don't have to watch it again if you don't want to, but it'll be there for a useful tip, just in case you're unsure of anything or want to share it with your staff. It could be really useful. So yeah, I just want to say thank you everyone for joining us this morning. I think it stopped raining in Norwich. No, it's still raining, unfortunately. So yeah, let's hope the weather gets better. And like Graham says, we can have the windows open and enjoy the summer that we've all learned to kind of love. So yeah, thanks everyone. Thanks to Graham as well. And hopefully we'll see you again on one of our virtual events. Did you want to say bye, Graham?
Thank you very much, Kayleen. Great to be involved again. All right, good luck, everybody. Have a great week. See you soon. Bye-bye.
See you later. Bye.